Okay, this is a tour of the virtual mixing board for the St. Paul's audio system. This is the iPad, of course. One thing you need to know, it's not written in the iPad, is that the unlock code is 123456. And once you unlock the iPad, there's really only one app that matters. It's this M32-Mix. That's the virtual mixing board. So let's tap that icon. Note that the sound system has to be powered on in the rack in order for this to work. This iPad, let me back out here to settings and show it's important that the iPad be on the St. Paul Audio Wi-Fi network. That is a network that is dedicated to just the audio components in the nave. So if this iPad is not on that network, nothing is going to work with the virtual mixing board. So let's go back to the M32-Mix app, and as soon as you start it, it connects to the audio system and shows what we see. So this is the main view. I tap home in the upper left, and then channel 1 through 8 also in the upper left. These are inputs. Basically what you control here are inputs and outputs. There are 2 screens of inputs, channel 1 through 8, and channel 9 through 16 that I just tapped. And then all the outputs are several screens over, icons over on bus 1 through 8, which I just tapped. But let's go back to the inputs, channel 1 through 8. So these are the main microphone inputs. I guess they're the only microphone inputs, to be honest. They all have a level controller that just controls what the volume is coming from that particular input. Let's go through them one by one. The lectern mic is just that. It's a wired microphone on the lectern. You'll note now it's muted. That's mute on, mute off. Red means muted. You tap the mute to mute it. And what we've discovered is that you have to have the lectern mic muted unless someone's speaking at the lectern, or you risk feedback. You don't get feedback instantly if it's unmuted, but it can cause problems. So during a service, the lectern mic needs to be muted, except when someone's at the lectern. Then you tap the button, it goes black, it's unmuted. Then when they're done speaking, you tap mute again. And the slider on this level this mic that I'm turning up and down, they all work that way. If you need to, if a speaker is speaking softly and you need to increase the level, or if they're speaking too loudly, you need to decrease the level, you just move the slider. So that's the lectern mic. The rest of these, no, that's not completely true. The next 5 of them are wireless. So handheld 1 and handheld 2 are wireless handheld microphones that look just like the little icon there. Then, and those are channels wireless 1 and wireless 2. If you look in the audio rack, you'll see 5 wireless microphone receivers. There are 4 all integrated together in one component, and then below them, that's 1 through 4, and below them in the rack is the fifth channel. And you don't need to set anything on those, but it just helps to know that we have 5 wireless microphones. So handheld 1 and 2 are wireless 1 and wireless 2. Then we have 3 different little microphone packs, the little battery powered packs that can clip on a belt or go in a pocket, and then have a microphone, either a lavalier or a headset style microphone attached. And those are labeled wireless 3, wireless 4, and wireless 5. So Pastor has wireless 3 pretty much permanently, so that's why it's just labeled Pastor here. Lisa has wireless 4, or whoever the assisting minister happens to be. When Lisa's away, she typically gives wireless 4 to that person. And then wireless 5 is sort of a floating one. Now here's the thing with wireless 5. There is a wireless 5 microphone pack, just like Pastor and Lisa have, and it's labeled wireless 5. They're also in the sound system. This is where it usually lives, in the sound system rack, above, in the baskets, the plastic baskets above the rack, you'll see a portable tabletop microphone. It's got a base with some batteries and a power switch and a mute and unmute, and then a little microphone with a little gooseneck at the end. That is also wireless 5, and it's very important to know that you can't have both the wireless pack and that tabletop wireless microphone on at the same time. So for a given service or event, you have to choose one. You can either use the pack or use the mic. If you turn them both on, I've not tried it. It seems to me I've had bad problems, though, now that I think about it. But it's not supposed to work, and we shouldn't count on it. So that's important to know. So wireless 5, the wireless pack, is often given to, say, an assisting, a visiting pastor, because sometimes pastor doesn't always give her wireless one to a visitor, depending on if it's locked in her office or not. Okay, and then the last input here on the far right is marked piano, and that is a wired microphone, and that jack is over on the pulpit side, low on the wall by where the grand piano usually is. So that is a single wired mic input. You can see that this is muted. We pretty much keep this muted permanently, not permanently, most of the time, because we don't typically use that microphone for anything. It works, it's fine. There's not a microphone plugged into it in general, but when there is a microphone plugged in, it does work. We just tend not to use it on a regular basis. All right, so that's channels 1 through 8. Let's tap the channel 9 through 16 icon in the upper left and talk about these. These are not all microphones. Let's go from left to right. The aux rack left and aux rack right. So in the audio rack, you'll see about halfway down there is an insert that says, it says aux input on and off. There's a toggle switch. And then it says aux input volume control. And in the middle is an 1/8 inch stereo jack, the same kind of jack that would be on like an old style Walkman or portable CD player, or it's the headphone jack before they got replaced on most phones. And that is an input if we want to ever play something through the sound system. So that's really the use case for that. Let's say somebody has an iPhone or some sort of portable audio device, and you want to play something through the sound system. That is these inputs. And these are slaved together, the left and right channel. As I move those up and down, I'm only moving the left one, but they both move together. So there is a physical switch to turn them on or off. On the physical toggle switch, it's on the in the rack. And of course, if that switch is off, then there'll be no input. And if it's on, then there will be input. We keep them muted because we don't typically do that. We don't typically play stuff through the sound system, but we could, and that's how. All right, so that's aux rack left, aux rack right. Then we have record input left and record input right. We really never use these. Also in the rack, just below where the aux input jack is and controls, there is a Denon digital recorder. My understanding is this dates from the prior sound system, but when we got the current sound system in about 2017, we asked the vendor to reuse it. And this was how this recorder, it's a digital recorder, it records onto SD cards. This is how we did podcasts of the service. This is how we recorded for podcasts before we switched over to YouTube videos during the pandemic. So this recorder, it goes both ways actually. So it will just record automatically when you put a card in and hit record. It records off the sound system. I don't believe you can control the level of what's going to the recorder, or if you can, I don't remember how. But you could also, once you've recorded something on an SD card, you could play it back. There's not only a record button on that Denon recorder, there's a play button. And if you play it back, the record in left and record in right, those are the inputs from the Denon digital recorder, and they control the level of that input. We keep these muted, we keep the levels down because we never ever use these. Before I made this recording, I tested it. That's probably the only time that anybody's ever played anything back from the recorder. It's just not a use case we use, but we have the controls here. And then the final inputs here are organ left and organ right. Now, these are microphones that are in the organ gallery in the rear of the nave, and I'm going to talk about how those inputs work. So actually, there are inputs on the audio system rack. It's near the bottom. Near the bottom panel is or near the bottom of the rack, I should say, is an insert, and it has two pairs of jacks. On the left are two XLR inputs labeled rack mic left, and I beg your pardon, they're rack mic 1 left, rack mic 2 right. So what are called rack mic left and right, or 1 and 2 in the audio rack, are actually what I have labeled organ left and right on the iPad, because there is wiring, there are jacks, XLR jacks up in the gallery that are wired to come down to the below the audio system rack, and then they plug into the rack. So basically there are physical microphones plugged in the gallery into two jacks. They come down to below the audio system rack, and then they're plugged in the audio system rack. These inputs could be anything, but the use case we use them for most of the time, all the time really, is capturing the organ for the streaming, for the YouTube videos. So that's why I just want to explain the discrepancy between why they're labeled organ left and organ right on the iPad, but physically on the sound system they are labeled rack mic 1 left, rack mic 2 right. And there is a companion video to this screencast video that is a video tour, and I will talk about those inputs there to sort of give you a picture for the verbal description I'm giving here. All right, so those are inputs. There's a little more I want to say about inputs, but first I'm going to talk about outputs. So now let's click the bus 1 through 8 icon. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th one from the left, or 4th from the right, bus 1 through 8. These are all the outputs that we have that we care about. The 5 on the left are speakers, and the 2 on the right are wired jack outputs. Let me talk about the speakers first. They're pretty much self-explanatory. Main left and main right are the large speakers in the wooden cabinets mounted on near the front of the nave to the next to the lectern and pulpit. So those are indeed the main speakers. Then there are 2 speakers in the balcony or the organ gallery. There are 2 speakers in the narthex. They had historically been mounted on the wall in the narthex, but when we moved services outside during the pandemic, I added a bunch of wire to them and took them off the wall. The hardware is still there. They could easily be back mounted in their metal racks. Everything needed is in the holes in the racks. But for now, they typically sit on the floor of the narthex with the extra wire coiled up. So for outside services, we take those speakers and position them outside. And in that case, they're no longer narthex, but this would be they would be the outside speakers. And then finally, the chancel speaker. It's not speakers; it's speaker. There's a single chancel speaker. It's on the lectern side, back, right by the door to the sacristy hallway. So this configuration that we have right now, these various levels, this is about right for a Sunday morning. The main left and right are right around 0 decibels. The balcony is toned down a little bit. The narthex we tend to leave pretty low when we're inside, because otherwise it just kind of booms in the narthex and it's not really that useful. And again, this is about the right level for the chancel speaker. The main purpose for the chancel speaker is so that the choir can hear better. So those are the speakers, and you just need to sort of tweak them and use your ears to decide what sounds good. And then on the right, labeled aux out left and aux out right, these correspond to 2 more physical jacks in the sound system rack. So I was a moment ago describing the rack mic 1 left, rack mic 2 right. Those 2 XLR jacks are on the left of an insert near the bottom of the sound system rack. And on the right are 2 1/4 inch inputs. And these are balanced inputs, actually. So for audio folks who know about audio who are listening to this, an XLR jack is a balanced input, and a 1/4 inch jack can be a balanced input, and in this case, it is a balanced input. And they are labeled aux out, or I beg your pardon, it's a balanced output. I'm sorry about that. Balanced output. The rack mic 1 left, rack mic 2 right, those are inputs. Aux out left and aux out right, those are outputs. And these outputs are 1/4 inch female jacks, a left and a right in the sound system. And this is how we capture audio for the streaming. So what happens is these outputs go to 2 more wires that go back up to the gallery. So up in the gallery, there is a metal box with 4 XLR jacks, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. The 2 on the top are inputs, and they are wired to go to the rack mic 1 left, rack mic 2 right. The bottom 2 of those jacks we use as outputs. So the aux out left and aux out right in the sound system rack travel through the wiring back to labeled jacks, XLR jacks in the gallery 3 and 4. And those come out of there and go into the physical mixer in the gallery, which then connects to the laptop and provides audio for the streaming. So all of the audio for the streaming comes through the main sound system here, controlled by this iPad, and it comes out the aux out left and aux out right jacks. So basically, they should stay as they are now. You can see they're at 0 decibels. So every input goes to, as a general rule, goes to all the speakers and goes to aux out left and right. But that's the one other thing that I wanted to talk about here. And so to this, I need to go to detail. So let's go back. I'm going to tap channel 1 through 8 again. And now I'm going to tap on the lectern mic, the yellow lectern mic. It's not, I don't think it's going to show on the screencast, but I just tapped on yellow lectern mic. And now you can see on the left, it says lectern mic. And then we have all these tabs across the top, starting with config/preamp. Now, basically, don't be terrified by this. This stuff has been set by the vendor, and we don't ever touch it. We don't touch settings here. Here's the gate tab. Don't change those. The dyne tab, we don't change those. The EQ tab, we don't change those. I suppose they could be changed, but nobody knows what they're doing really with them, so we just leave them. The sends tab, however, is the important one. So the way to think of this is kind of like a matrix. You have, for every input, the sends control where that input goes. So if you look at these little blue icons across the top of the sends tab, you can see that they correspond to the outputs we just saw on the bus 1 through 8 tab. So see there, main left, main right, I'm reading from left to right, main left, main right, balcony, narthex, chancel, and then aux out left and aux out right. You can't see that it says aux out left and right, but it does. So these are all set at 0 dB right now. And basically what this means is any input from the lectern mic is going to go at sort of a neutral level to all the speakers and the aux out left and right. So this is how we want all the inputs. You know, you can change the level of a given input and output at various places. You can control the slider on the mic itself. Here, I'm going to go back to home here, and on the lectern mic 1, see we can move the slider up and down to control the input level there for that one input. And now if I tap bus 1 through 8, we can control the sliders to control that output, how loud that is, based on all the inputs coming in. But there's one more way to control the level, and now I'm going to go back to channel 1 through 8. I'm going to tap on lectern mic with the yellow square for it again, and I'm going to go back to sends where we were. You could also change the level here. So you could send the lectern mic at a higher level to say one speaker than other speakers, or the aux out at different levels. But that's a level of configuration that we have that we don't use. We just don't need that. So we just keep these all at this same level. So what we're looking at here in the Sends tab, it means that for the lectern mic input, it's going to go to all 5 of the speakers and the aux out left and right for the streaming, all at the same level. So this one input from the lectern mic goes everywhere. It goes to all speakers. It goes to the aux out left and right for streaming. And this is how all of the microphones should be. If I go back, I'm going to tap the home in the upper left, and we're going to look at the all the microphone inputs. They should all be in the Sends tab, as I just showed for lectern mic. There is an exception, however. During the year when the choir is singing, we use handheld 1 and 2 to be left and right microphones to pick up the choir singing to go to the live stream. But here's the thing. We only want, in that case, the handheld 1 and 2, we only want it to go to the live stream. We don't want to amplify the choir in the nave. We just don't need to do that. So we want the microphones to pick up the choir, send them out to aux left and aux right so they're picked up for streaming, but we don't want them to go to the speakers. So now I'm going to show how that works. I'm going to tap handheld 1. I'm going to go over to the Sends tab. And in fact, the choir season just ended as I record this, so this particular input this microphone is still configured that way. So now look at main left, right, balcony, narthex chancel. Look at the 5 blue icons on the left, and you'll note that the levels, see, they're all at 0. And what that means for the 5 speakers is that any input from handheld 1 will not go to any of the speakers. So we've had issues when we've had people come in, or just people want to use handheld 1 as a microphone and amplify their voice. When it's in this choir configuration, that doesn't work. And you'll also notice that we have aux out left at a high level 0 dB, but the right slider is down at nothing. And what that means is that handheld 1 only goes to aux out left. It only goes to the left channel for the streaming. We stream in stereo, so handheld 1 is the left channel. And now I'm gonna go back to what I can actually do. If you look at handheld 1 on the left, and you look at the very bottom, there's a little left arrow and a right arrow. That lets us step through the various inputs. So if I tap that right arrow, now I'm showing handheld 2, and you can see the configuration is the same, except now the left aux out channel for streaming is at 0, and the right is up at 0. I should say it's at a low level, and the right is at 0 dB at a level to send to the streaming. So let me flip back and forth. Here's handheld 1. You can see channel 7, aux out left, is getting signal. Channel 8 is not. And then here's handheld 2 is the opposite. That's the configuration we want for the choir. But this is really important to know, that if, let's say there's a congregational meeting and we need the handhelds to work, or there is somebody coming in, a renter using the space, and they need the handhelds to work, it's very important to go into the iPad and undo this. So I'm going to do that right now. So let's go back. I'm going to go to handheld 1. I'm going to take all these sliders for 1 through 5 for the speakers, and I'm going to put them up to 0 like this. So now handheld 1 will go to all the speakers, and I'm going to take the right output for the auxiliary and move that up, because now we're not treating this as a left channel. It's both channels in the output to the YouTube stream. All right. Now I'm going to tap the right arrow at the lower left to go to handheld 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move these up to 0 dB, and then I'm going to also move aux left up to 0 dB as well. So that is the configuration that we want for using the handheld 1 and 2, so they can just be used as any other microphone. Now I'm going to tap the home icon on the upper left. So now all of the microphones that we see. Well, actually, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to lectern. I'm going to go over to Sends, and I'm going to tap the right arrow at the lower right. So I'm going to step through the inputs in order. So here's lectern mic. Here's handheld 1. You can see it's all the same. Handheld 2, it's basically the same. Pastor's mic, Lisa's mic, the same. Wireless 5, the piano. All those inputs are the same. They go to the speakers, and they go to the aux out left and right. There's one more thing I want to mention about this. I'm going to go back to wireless 5. So sometimes during the choir year at rehearsals, so that I don't have to shout at the choir, I will wear wireless 5, but I don't want my voice to boom throughout the entire nave. I really only need it to come out the chancel speaker. So when I do that, I quickly grab the iPad and I move like this. I move main left and right, and balcony and narthex. I move those like that to 0. So now you can see the wireless 5 input is only going to the chancel speakers and nowhere else. And this is a good configuration for a choir rehearsal where we only care about amplification in the chancel. But I try every time to remember to put them back, these sliders 1 through 4, like this, so that wireless 5 works as expected and it goes to every speaker. But if I forget, somebody has to do what I just did here, and they have to move the sliders up to the 0 dB for 1 through 4, as well as the chancel speakers input 5. And then I think there's one more thing that I need to talk about, and that is the naming tab. The naming tab is just what it sounds like. It's how you name label the different inputs and outputs. So you can see this is for wireless 5. There's the text wireless 5 here that we could change. I'm not going to change it, but you could. You can change the color. You can change the icon. So I've configured them to be as meaningful as possible based on our inputs. So if you ever did want to change the colors or naming for the inputs or the outputs, it's done on the naming tab. And then I haven't talked about the preset tab, but that's more configuration that we don't need. So just to review, the config, this tab, this tab, this tab, and this tab. The first 4 we don't mess with. The last tab, preset, we don't mess with. Sends, we definitely make changes to for given inputs. And then naming, on rare occasions, if we were to change what a input or output was used for, that's how you would change it there. That's all we need that for. So you basically, most of the time, I just tapped the home icon in the upper left. Most of the time, you'll be in this view right here to either look at these inputs, and the main thing that somebody running the iPad will do is change the levels or unmute and mute the lectern mic. You may occasionally need to go into detail, and the way you get to the detail, again, just as a reminder, is you tap on the name and icon of the input. So I'm going to tap lectern mic, and you can see that we've switched to detail, second icon from the left in the upper left, and now we have all the detail screens. And if I tap home again in the upper left, we go back to the upper view. Basically, home and detail are the only 2 of these upper row of icons that we use. I'm tapping effects, just not something we use at all. It's some of this is configured in the sound system, but again, it's been configured by the vendor. We don't do anything with it. The scenes, you can see we got a message that's not even supported. Meters is just a global view of all the inputs and all the outputs that you can look at several different views of. I have never found this particularly useful, but it's here. The recorder, you can put a USB stick in the audio rack. There is it's labeled the Midas, which is one of the main controllers for the sound system, has a USB-A slot in it, and that's near the bottom of the audio rack. So we could do an audio-only recording onto a USB stick and control it with this screen. We've never done that. We've skipped that and gone straight to the video. Routing is again something we never need to touch. monitor. I believe you can hear through the headphone jack on this iPad using this monitor icon screen and control what you hear, but we've never done that, don't need to do that. And then finally the setup icon is, whoops, I do not want to stop screen recording. The setup icon is, again, stuff that we don't control or don't change. I mean, these are various settings that could be changed, but we don't change them. That's the short version. So I guess one of the takeaways, I'm going to tap home here in the upper left. One of the takeaways of this recording is that this iPad is it's complicated and potentially intimidating because there's so many settings, but in reality there are very few that need to be messed with. About the most complicated thing we'd ever need to do is changing the sends, as I showed, for a given input. But otherwise, you pretty much stay in this view, channel 1 through 8, to control the inputs. Channel 9 through 16, these inputs don't need to change. We don't use the aux rack left and right on a regular basis and record in left and right on a regular basis, so they just stay muted. And the level of the organ mics is typically like this at about -5 dB. Those don't need to be changed. So you stay on channel 1 through 8 like this. And the other thing then would be I'm tapping bus 1 through 8 if you need to change the volume of a given speaker for all the inputs. If you go like, okay, the balcony's not loud enough, I need to make it a little louder. That would be how you would do it here. So really bus 1 through 8, channel 1 through 8 for inputs. That is all you need to use on a regular basis for the iPad. And that is the sound system explanation for the iPad.